chicken breasts, jerky, or more. The Eden Meat Market at 477-2711. That's 477-2711. You can get all their deals online at EdenMeat.com. Also check out Eden Catering, the Eden Cafe, Eden Grill, the Wild Goose Cafe, Heritage Ridge Travel Plaza, and more. It's the Eden Meat Market. Log on.
All right, welcome back to Between the Lines, the big contested race locally on the November ballot. Coming up in just a couple of weeks is for the 52nd Assembly District seat, where Democrat Kevin Booth is challenging incumbent Republican Jeremy Thiesfeldt. And they join us on Between the Lines for a debate. And this debate also is being live streamed at radioplusinfo.com. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Greg. Thanks for having us.
Pleasure having you both on the program. Both candidates will be able to tell the listeners about themselves, why they are running for office, and then they'll answer some questions about different issues, and at the very end we'll be able to make one last pitch to the listeners. And Kevin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, again, thanks for having us on. We really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to as many folks as possible. I think it's really important that everybody knows about the issues and gets to know the candidates a little bit better. I'm born and raised right here in Fond du Lac County, born and raised on Fond du Lac on National Avenue. I studied economics at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and I've had a career in restaurants and hospitality. So I am a first-time candidate. This has been an exciting process for me along the way. We've learned some things, and some of the things we're most focused on, interested in running for, we want to get our infrastructure taken care of, back in order where it should be. I think we all know that our roads aren't quite in good repair. Also want to expand digital infrastructure into the rural areas and make sure they've got access to the internet that we take for granted in the city sometimes. Another key part of our race is fully funding our public education system. I think the budget's been cut in that degree for too long. And then last but certainly not least, expanding healthcare options for folks in the community. Those are the big three for me. Looking forward to answering all the questions. And again, I want to thank you for having us on and appreciate the opportunity.
Why are you running for office?
I'm running for office because honestly, I just couldn't sit back and watch anymore. Politics has gotten a little bit divisive. It's gotten a little bit ugly, and I think we need new voices and new faces representing us. So I stepped up and I wanted to be a part of it.
All right. Republican State Representative Jeremy Thiesfeldt, you, this would be, what, your third term?
I'm in my fourth term now.
You're in your fourth term now. This would be your fifth term.
That's
okay.
Correct, yes.
And before that, you served on the Fond du Lac City Council. Tell the listeners about yourself and why you are running for a fifth term.
Well, once again, thanks for having us in here. WFDL has always stepped up, I think, every one of the election cycles, except for the one time I think I didn't have an opponent, and done a debate like this, which is good public service to the community. As I've said all the other years that I have run, I was born in Fond du Lac, had to move away when I was very young, but had the opportunity to move back here in 1999. And the reason I moved back was because my teaching career brought me here. I started teaching at Winnebago Lutheran Academy, had been teaching elementary in the Milwaukee area and St. Paul, Minnesota area prior to that. And was delighted to move back here after hearing many stories from my older brothers and sisters. There are 11 of us in the family. About what a great place, what a family-friendly community Fond du Lac is, and wanted to be a part of that. And so my wife and I came back here. We largely raised our 4 children here, who are now college age and older. One of them has gotten married. And in the process of teaching at Winnebago Lutheran Academy, I got the bug to get interested. I got interested in local politics because I was teaching government at WLA, and decided I wanted to help out my community, and ran for the city council. Was successful for 3 terms in that, and then ran for the state assembly. And I would hope everybody who has followed my political career over the years would realize and would have noticed that I realize that all good ideas don't come from one side. I am a conservative. I don't think anybody would deny that if they've followed what I've supported over the years. But I am open to bipartisanship. In fact, I reach across the aisle as often as I can, as often as the Democrats are willing to meet with me and try to craft some good laws for the public that reflect both sides of the aisle. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to an engaging debate here.
All right. Let me ask you, how would you describe Wisconsin's economy? Right now we have a record low unemployment rate. Report, however, by UW-Madison that came out last month said while the state's economy has finally recovered from the Great Recession a full 10 years after it hit, 1 of every 5 workers in Wisconsin is earning poverty-level wages. The State of Working Wisconsin 2018 said unemployment in the state is low. A 2016 median income for a family of 4 with 2 working adults topped $90,000. That was $10,000 higher than it was in 2010. Income had recovered to levels comparable to the historic highs of the early 2000s, but that not everyone was benefiting from the overall gains. What, Representative Thiesfeldt, what is your overall thoughts on where Wisconsin is at when it comes to the economic recovery, the state of the economy in Wisconsin?
Well, I have heard, and I think I largely agree with the statement that many have heard, is that our state is, in economic terms, is as good as it's ever been right now, probably rivaling the years when Tommy Thompson was in office. Now, when you look at that, you're kind of looking at overall economic numbers. And it doesn't necessarily break down to all the different demographics that there are in society. But I think for all the demographic groups, things are improving as well. Fond du Lac in particular is a community that is heavily middle class, a lot of manufacturing jobs. And manufacturing is one of those industries that is, when there is an economic slowdown, it's kind of slow to recover in the middle class as well. But the middle class is improving in this area. And it's a lagging indicator, and I think that if we maintain the policies we've been putting in place here the last 8 years, it's going to continue to improve as we move forward.
All right. Kevin Booth, how would you describe the state of Wisconsin's economy?
Yeah, I mean, the recession is not lost on me by any means. You know, it was 10 years ago, but I'm concerned that sometimes we're forgetting what that felt like and what that looked like. That happened, giving my age away a little bit, but that happened to me, when I was in my senior year of high school for the most part. And it took a really great toll on my entire generation, and I don't think that we've forgotten what that looks like, what that felt like. There's some hard times for a lot of us, my parents included. And so it is true that right now Wisconsin is certainly in a better place than we were 10 years ago. There's no question about that. The economy has been on the uptick, but we can't forget that so many people are working 2 or 3 part-time jobs. You know, the unemployment rate is at record low, and people are having to work twice as many hours as they used to do it. And I don't think that's right. I think that people should be able to work, their full-time jobs, choose to work a second one if they want to for extra income, but people are working several jobs and just barely getting by to do it. So the state is doing well. The state has recovered in 10 years, but I want to make sure that translates to benefit to everybody in every neighborhood.
All right, let me ask you this. More than 675,000 Wisconsin workers earn less than $12 an hour. 29 states have set their minimum wage above the federal minimum of $7.25 an hour. Mm-hmm. Wisconsin's not one of them. Mm-hmm. Do you support raising Wisconsin's minimum wage?
I do support raising Wisconsin's minimum wage. I haven't quite decided on what that number should be yet. I think there's a lot of debate and discussion to be had about it. I've heard everything from don't raise it at all the way up to I've actually heard as high as 21. Now again, 21 is, in my opinion, is not the right number. I don't think that we can spike the minimum wage like that. At the same time, I do think it needs to be increased. I would support increasing the minimum wage to a living wage sooner than later, effective immediately. But long term, we need to look at incremental increases. I think the minimum wage should go up on an annual basis based on cost of living. I think that's the way that makes the most sense. The argument against raising the minimum wage obviously is always, you're going to increase costs for businesses and this and that. So I think smaller, more routine increases is going to help the people without shocking the system. We can't just double the minimum wage overnight, but I think we need to get it to where it should be.
Where should it be?
I don't have a number picked out in mind just yet.
Okay.
I think we could look at that a little bit further. But long term, it should go up with the cost of living.
All right, Jeremy, do you think the minimum wage should be higher than what it is right now in Wisconsin?
I think the minimum wage is fine where it is right now, and the evidence of that is that there are so few people that are working at the minimum wage level. I mean, the numbers that you mentioned, those are largely people who are in entry-level positions. And I think that, well, actually it happened here in Fond du Lac just recently. The McDonald's over on the east side of town, if you walk in there now, there's a whole lot less counters than there were before. The clerk that you would find who you would give your order to is now a machine that's there. And this has been happening all across the country. And so the higher you're going to make that minimum wage, the fewer of those entry-level type positions there are going to be available. And just yesterday I drove to Madison, and just as an example that there are lots of jobs available out there right now that really don't require job training to the extent of, say, a college degree. The Walmart facility in Beaver Dam, I drove past it yesterday, and they had a sign outside the distribution center there advertising starting wages of between $16 and $18 an hour. Now, I've not worked in a place like that, but I've visited that place, and these are not jobs that are requiring a college degree by any means, and you can make a pretty good starting living in your career as a worker by going to a place like that. And all the other jobs out there are going to have to compete with that. And so you really can't offer minimum wage. I hear this from the employers constantly now. You cannot offer a wage as low as that and expect people to come and work for you.
Is there any point where you would favor increasing the minimum wage?
Well, I suppose it has to at some point.
What would that point be?
It's $7.25 right now,
Yeah,
I
right.
believe is what it is. I would be comfortable with some sort of a cost of living increase. It's not really a living wage. It's not intended to be that. But I would be comfortable if we brought that up to $8 an hour or so.
Now?
Well, I don't know about when we do it, but
Okay.
even if I want to do it, I'm one of 99 in the legislature.
All right.
Technically, one of 132 if you count the Senate.
All right. According to the latest Marquette University Law School poll, education and healthcare are at the top of the list of concerns for Wisconsin residents. I want to ask you both a couple of questions about Medicaid. Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald was asked a couple of questions about this yesterday with efforts in Congress to repeal the Affordable Care Act. The question was asked, and Senate Majority Leader Fitzgerald said this week his chamber would pass a bill guaranteeing insurance coverage for people with pre-existing conditions if it became necessary. Would you support such a bill?
Well, I already have.
Okay.
The state assembly passed that late in the session
All
last
right.
year.
So this would have to go to the Senate. So
Correct.
you support
Yeah.
that.
So if I would presume, there'll be some different members obviously in the legislature this time around, but I would presume if the Senate, they're talking about coming back for Kimberly Clark. I'm not sure they'll come back. They can do anything else
Okay.
if they come back in the lame duck session. But if not, I would suspect that there'll be some sort of legislation on this early next session, and if it is similar to what I voted on last time,
You'd support it.
I believe I would support that.
Kevin
yes.
Booth?
Yeah, he had said if it became necessary. It's absolutely necessary. It's never not necessary to cover pre-existing conditions.
All right. Governor Walker has suggested for some time now that there be work requirements on people in order for them to get health insurance through Medicaid. What do you agree with that?
I do not. Sometimes health factors can be contributing reasons why people aren't able to work or aren't able to participate in the workforce or aren't able to find the jobs that are available. So, again, putting attachments on it requirements on it. All it's really doing is restricting access, restricting service, and that's not something that we should be doing. It's not right.
Politico is reporting this week that the governor is delaying implementing any of these changes until after the election because the governor has seen the Marquette Law School poll that shows health care is at the top of the minds of Wisconsin residents, and he's concerned that if he implemented these changes, it could hurt him politically at the polls. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on requiring people, having a work requirement in place for them to get health insurance through Medicaid?
Well, I think it kind of depends on what they're needing the Medicaid for. I mean, are they, do they have some sort of debilitating condition that is preventing them from working? If people have the capability to work, they should be working, particularly in the market that we're in right now. 3% unemployment is below the level that most experts say is full employment. And so there really is no reason, if you are a capable person, of being out and being in the workforce. And frankly, we need them to be in the workforce. And if you're in the workforce, then you're contributing towards your own health care costs. If somebody is truly disabled and unable to work, that's where Medicare would kick in. And that's a whole different ballgame than Medicaid.
Should the governor, if he's going to go ahead and implement this, though, should he come forward now before the election and say so?
I'm not going to judge what the governor needs to do. I'll just say for myself here right now what I'm willing to support. And his idea that we should have Medicaid, in order to get Medicaid, that you should be working, I would largely support that because we need those people in the workforce.
Do you think the governor should state his intentions before the election?
Yeah, you absolutely should. And I'll comment on any of that. We need representatives that aren't afraid to say how they feel and what they believe in. And he needs to make a stance. He needs to take a position. Waiting and delaying for political gain is wrong, and that's why people don't trust government. That's why people don't trust their representatives, because it's all about getting elected and what's next. So, yes, the governor should absolutely make his intentions clear, no matter what they are, good, bad, or otherwise. People deserve to know how he feels about it and what he intends to do.
The Assembly Speaker said within the last couple of weeks, again, he would absolutely not support accepting federal Medicaid expansion dollars. Do you think the state should accept federal Medicaid expansion money?
Absolutely. Those are dollars that were paid in by all of us in the state to the federal government, and we should have them back. There's no reason that we shouldn't. Turning those away is, again, just setting people up to not have coverage that they deserve or that they should have. And it's part of that self-fulfilling, self-creating problem, right? We turned away the dollars, and then we say we don't have the dollars. Well, you just can't have it both ways.
You saw what Speaker Voss said about not accepting federal Medicaid expansion dollars. He said no. What are your thoughts?
No, I actually hadn't seen that, but I guess that doesn't surprise me. That's consistent with what we've done before. But no, we should not accept that. Whenever you're going to accept any kind of federal money, it comes with strings attached to it, and very large strings attached to it. And usually the way it works is the deal looks really great up front. And I think up front they were saying something like they were going to cover 90% of the cost. There is no way the federal government is going to maintain that level. In fact, they've advertised there's no way they're going to maintain that level of subsidy. And so how long is it going to be before all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from under you? And then usually part of those strings is that if you accept it, you have to keep accepting it. And so the rug gets pulled out from under you, and all of a sudden you have this huge hole in your budget where you've got to come up with hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps billions of dollars, to cover a program that the federal government had said that they were going to provide. The federal government hardly has doesn't have enough money to cover its own expenses as it is. Why should we think that they're going to continue to supply that level of subsidy and then simply shift it over to the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin?
A report titled Wisconsin Transportation by the Numbers, compiled by TRIP. That's a nonprofit transportation research group funded by road building business interests, including equipment manufacturers, distributors, suppliers, transit engineers, and labor unions, showed that half of Wisconsin's major roads are in poor or mediocre shape. Madison, Milwaukee, and Wausau roads are in the worst conditions according to the national report. How did we get here? What's your reaction to that? And what do we need to do to have better results in the next report?
Okay, well, how we got here that goes back years in the making. And that goes with paying way too much for transportation projects across the state. And then when we were having some problems funding the budget back in the early 2000s when Governor Doyle was in office, he started, I shouldn't say he started, he maybe continued, but he really moved millions, tens of millions of dollars out of the transportation fund to be used on varying other programs, even new social type programs. And that impacted road projects all across the state. It impacted local funding of road projects all across the state. As Republicans came into office, and this came when I entered in 2011, I was able to play a part in making sure that those transportation dollars can no longer be shifted away by having a constitutional amendment to prevent that. And so going forward, we have been trying to fix the problems of the DOT. We have a new secretary in there now that I believe is doing good work. He just came out a couple days ago signing the record of decision to get the Highway 23 project rolling next summer. And they're being very aggressive in trying to make sure that projects get done on time and on budget, and that we're maximizing the dollars that are being spent on roads. And as far as the studies go, most of those studies that show that are done by organizations that are kind of backing or backed by a transportation builders group.
They are. But the former DOT secretary, a Republican lawmaker, has been critical of Governor Scott Walker's approach to roads.
I agree that is the case, but that former lawmaker also, when the audit of the DOT came out, received heavy criticism within that audit for some of the methods and practices that had been done by the Department of Transportation on his watch, which is one of the reasons that I suspect him. He did leave of his own volition, but I believe that's probably one of the reasons why he decided it was time to go and let somebody else have a try. But there was a deal, and it was funded by the DOT, as much as they fund something themselves, but they did do a study that showed the roads in Wisconsin have improved the last few years.
Kevin Booth?
Yeah, questioning the source of the study does not change the quality of the roads. And we drive them every day, and we know exactly what they look like. We know exactly how many, tires we popped on them. So the question back to the question was, how did we get here? What do we do about it? We simply need to prioritize it. We need to prioritize infrastructure spending. That's how we make any budget. That's how we make our personal budgets at home. That's how the government needs to behave as well. So to say we don't have the money to take care of these things when we're giving away subsidies like $4.5 billion to Foxconn is there's your answer, right? It always comes back to what you choose to spend your dollars on. That's how I spend my dollars. That's how the government should spend their dollars. And if we want our roads fixed, let's make it a priority.
All right. We are talking with the candidates for the 52nd Assembly District seat, incumbent Republican State Representative Jeremy Thiesfeldt, Democrat Kevin Booth, and it's time for final comments. Why should people vote for you when they go to the polls in November? Democrat Kevin Booth.
Yeah, again, thank you again for having us on today, letting us talk to the listeners and introduce ourselves a little bit. I think folks should be interested in something new. We've had Jeremy mentioned he's been in 4 years and he's looking for a fifth. I think that's well enough. The Assembly has 2-year terms for a reason, and we need new faces, new blood with new ideas. That's what it comes down to, and I think I've got a more progressive, forward-thinking approach to how we do this, fully funding our schools, prioritizing infrastructure, expanding healthcare options for folks in the community, and ending corporate subsidies like the Foxconn deal. So again, you can either continue on the way we've been, or you can vote for something new, something different, with some fresh ideas for what Wisconsin can look like in the future.
All right. Incumbent Republican State Representative Jeremy Thiesfeldt, when voters go to the polls in November, why should they vote for you?
Well, thanks again for the opportunity to come in here, and thanks to all the listeners out there. Just recently, I attended a lecture from the top economist in the State Department of Revenue, and he went through a list of 12 economic indicators for the state of Wisconsin that are widely recognized by economists as being things that tell you whether your state or your nation is doing well. And on every one of those 12, Wisconsin had up arrows. That was not the case back in 2010 before we came in office. In fact, I would venture to say it was probably down arrows, and if not all of them, close to all of them. So that is the change that has taken place since I was elected to the state legislature. And I'm not claiming that I'm responsible for all of that, but I've been able to play a part of that. And the reason that I love to serve this community in office is that I love this community. What a blessing it has been for my wife and I to raise our children in this community, and it means quite a bit to me. And I want future generations in Fond du Lac to have the same blessing that I have had to raise their children here as well. You know, I had a good friend of mine ask me about, knocking on the doors and things like that for campaigns, and she's someone who goes back a long time in campaigns in this community, and she gave me some good advice years ago when she said, someday when you hold office, make sure that you understand why people in this community vote for you. They vote for you because they like you, because you're available to them. And at the end of the day, when you've been elected to office, and some people voted for you and some people didn't vote for you, you still want to have the respect of all those people, and you still want to be able to go up to their door, walk up on their porch, knock on their door, and have a good conversation with them. I think I have accomplished that in my years on city council and my years in the state legislature. I do listen to people, may not always agree, but I think we can have a respectful conversation even when we disagree. So I'm asking for your vote on November 6th. Greg, I'd like to have yours too. I don't think I'm getting Kevin's. But I'm hoping that everybody will reward my efforts with a fifth term in the legislature.
Incumbent Republican State Representative Jeremy Thiesfeldt, Democrat Kevin Booth, greatly appreciate both of you on the program today, live streamed at radioplusinfo.com. Best of luck to both of you on November 6th. And
Thank you.
Go out and vote.